Homeside Chats. This is Andrea French, Executive Director for TAG, Transportation Advocacy Group. Today's episode, we're joined by Texas Transportation Commissioner Laura Ryan. Welcome, Commissioner.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me this morning.
Yes, thank you for your time today, and thank you for all of your service and leadership, certainly since you took the commissioner role and during these challenging times. I wanted to ask you what your days have looked like as a statewide office holder during the COVID-19 pandemic. And can you share just how that's changed the day-to-day for TxDOT?
Well, for me personally, I think a lot of the information and a lot of the responsibilities that we haven't changed. What has changed is how we get them done. And like everybody else, we have done that through technology and innovation and creative ways. Decisions have changed a little bit. Makeup, no makeup, sweats, shorts, those kinds of things, serious discussions. But all seriousness, what we do hasn't changed. That's probably what's made me, and I think I can speak for the rest of the commission, incredibly proud that whether it's our employees that get up and go to work in the field every day or those that are working from home, we have been able to continue to get what needs to get done. And nothing has fallen through the cracks.
You know, as part of what we're watching, the frontline workers, many of those frontline workers were our construction and highway workers that were still out, moving things along, perhaps at even a faster pace. Can you share kind of what the work looked like on the ground and the ability to maybe work a little bit better and easier without traffic, as much traffic as normally there would be? Or as you said, is it really just kind of keep going along as you always would?
No, there's a lot of work out there. When the pandemic hit, in March, TxDOT had $24 billion of contracts active, and that hasn't stopped. So as you said, there's a lot of people out working, and there's been some additional challenges, but there's been some real opportunities and benefits. And one of the things that probably is a first for TxDOT is we have been able to expedite a project, shut down some main lanes during rush hour, and we received 0 complaints. Which was a first, because that would never have happened previously. But that's a good example of a situation where the project was scoped that those lanes would be shut down at night, and that work would get done at night. And because of the reduction in traffic, we were able to do it during the day, which speeds things up. There's some cost efficiencies to that. And honestly, it keeps our workers and drivers safer. So there's been some good things that have come out of this.
Right. And can you talk a little bit about the safety piece? So one of the things that was always illuminating to me sitting in the commission meetings is that there's always a safety briefing that starts off the meeting, and TxDOT always has put safety first. And so when you find yourself in a challenge in a situation like this, that serves you well. And so can you share a little bit about how those practices already in place really helped TxDOT through this?
Sure. Safety has been a core component and foundation of TxDOT long before I arrived. And our director, James Bass, shares a story that at a time, safety wasn't where the agency wanted it to be. And they really put a directive to make safety for our workers and our contractors' workers and partners' workers really top priority. And they took on that effort years ago and have seen immense improvement at times when people said it couldn't get done. So that has become an ingrained part of the culture and TxDOT's DNA, and it truly is what most of our employees get up to focus on in leadership too. Safety for themselves, safety for our traffic and partners, and it starts with a daily reminder. And I think that that's human nature, and it's a very simple back to the basics kind of concept that TxDOT took on, and it has paid off well because the results show that it works.
Right. And so if there's a message that you can share with the users of the system, so us drivers out there, as far as safety, what would that be? Slow
down. The sad thing, the commission took on End the Streak a few years ago. The agency has adopted it, and it's And we haven't had a fatality in a fatality-free day in over 19 years in Texas. And I have been asked multiple times by friends and family and people that I've interacted with, well, we found our day, right? We must have been able to have a death-free day with so little traffic. And the reality is that our roads with miles traveled are more deadly right now, because we're finding that people with open roads have absolutely increased speeds, which has absolutely increased deaths. Our daily death average as of this morning for this year was 8.4 daily deaths. And we've averaged previously 10. So is it down a little bit? Yes, but you would think with the current situation, it would be down significantly, and it's not.
You would, and that's shocking for you and for, you know, kind of us thinking about that as users of the system. And I would think it would be instructive too, to say where to kind of focus some of the education and the messaging, is that it's also, it's about distraction, but it's also about just pure speed and how we're actually being safe in our vehicles. So, but we thank you for taking that on. I think that it's a reflection that everybody sees you as the leader in that. If they're all coming to ask you what the stats are right now, that's because they see you as that person that has really spearheaded that initiative. So thank you for that. And we will continue to support initiatives like Vision Zero and things like that, where anything we can do to educate the public on the importance of safety. I want to go back and talk a little bit about some of the other impacts of COVID, right? So look at the numbers that are coming in from the comptroller. Obviously, you know, across the board, whatever industry you're in right now, you're looking at numbers constantly and wondering what the impact's going to be. Can you share how the commission is looking at the upcoming UTP and just kind of where the feelings are right now as far as funding for TxDOT?
Sure. No, I appreciate that opportunity. It's a great question. We don't have an answer. We don't know. We are watching the comptroller's reports and information and updates probably as regularly as anyone. We have our current UTP is being drafted. As everyone knows, I'm not able to share exact projects. There's still a lot of work being done on it. However, it will be public at the June meeting, and the commission will vote to be able to present that to the public. So it'll be out for public review in early July and public comment. And again, as we've always said, public input's needed. It is a very valuable part of our process because there's nothing done in isolation, and it's taken seriously. So it'll go out for July, and then the UTP will be seen again in August for the commission to vote on. We've not seen any delay or disruption in current projects. We don't see a lot of impact for this fiscal year, which will end in August. We are expecting an update in July, as everybody is, and with that, we'll have a clear picture. Certainly believe that picture will start to impact the next fiscal year. There's kind of a short, intermediate, and longer term view. So there is still a possibility that there could be an amendment to anything that's voted on in August, depending on what that cash flow and the budget looks like. I think that the longer term impact is truly going to start in the next biennium budget of 22 to 24. And I think that's where we're truly going to have some tough decisions, as all agencies and probably a lot of households too. But that's, at least right now, the flow that we are anticipating.
Right. And can you share too, looking ahead at the UTP and talking about, you know, it sounds kind of the call to action to those that would be interested in engaging in that process, right, is to get engaged, right? And I liked your phrase, there's nothing done in isolation. You know, and I think we need to be reminded that if there's something that's really important to us, that we need to be able to share that and come to the commission with those comments and those concerns or requests, and that it is a very public process. So thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit about specific projects. Obviously, locally here in Houston, we've got a lot going on, which we're so grateful for. And one of the projects that has, you know, created some buzz, obviously, would be I-45, the North Highway Improvement Project, right? So if you want to share a little bit about that process, I think there's a story there to tell that started a long time ago with TxDOT. And if you could kind of start from there and move us forward to kind of where we are now, I think that would be great.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. It is definitely a project that has received a lot of information, a lot of buzz, a lot of comments, a lot of input, and they're all welcome. I think currently the one thing that I think probably we don't think about as much is that Houston is an incredibly diverse city. It's also the 4th largest city, and the growth is projected to be exponential, which is a great problem to have.
Right.
I think sometimes we don't all take into account, and myself included, when we're looking at things, the diversity of the city is going to create a diversity of needs. It's going to create a diversity of opinions. It's going to create a diversity of input. And I think we have to respect that. And I don't think there's an either or with this project. So as input comes in, I have encouraged everybody to send in their thoughts, share their thoughts, because, great minds are all over the place. Mm-hmm. But let's also respect that it shouldn't be an either or, right? We have to find a way to bring all of them together in this project. And that's really what TxDOT's working hard to do. So send them in. We need them. We want them. We're working with the public and actually enjoy it. But let's find that balance, I think, is the story that's not being shared. The NHHIP project started years ago, over a decade ago. And I have a slide that I think creates a visual that is very beneficial, because I think a lot of the input that's out there right now, or the discussions, are that we will soon come upon the FEIS and the record of decision. And there's a lot of people that feel that that is a final step, that once that's out there, there's really not a lot that can be done. And if you look at this visual, I think it changes that. And what it shows is, you can see that it starts with 2000 and it goes to 2030, although it'll go way beyond that. What I think is the first key to understand is that public involvement and engagement is throughout that full 30-year time frame that you see on this slide. You're also able to see on some of the vertical lines where we currently are in red, and you're able to see that where we believe the record of decision will come out. The other piece that I think is very important is that the environmental clearance runs after finalized after the record of decision. But most of the detailed design, which is what a lot of the input is coming in on, we'd like to see this, we'd rather see this, we are looking for this, why can't we do this? Those types of things truly can't occur in this process until after the record of decision is out and finalized. And that is something we've tried to share. I think this slide does a very good job of sharing that. It also shows that most of the right-of-way acquisition comes after the record of decision, as well as procurement for the 3 segments. I will say, though, that you'll also see that some of the right-of-way acquisition on this slide is before the record of decision, and actually before the red line, which is where we're at. And that really speaks to the fact that where there has been a need, TxDOT has taken it upon themselves to engage to make sure that disruption is minimal. So we're really just at the point that the work's going to start. The perception, I think, is sometimes right now that we're very close to the end of the real work, but it really starts once the record of decision occurs, which we expect probably the FEIS to be out in the next 30 to 45 days. So sometime late June, July, and then we would expect the record of decision to be later in the year.
So in talking about I-45, we know that the mayor did send a letter to TxDOT with the preferred list of options for I-45. And can you share kind of TxDOT's response to that and kind of where that stands right now?
Absolutely. TxDOT's been working with the city of Houston very closely for a very long time, and we were expecting the letter. We knew that the steering committee that created that letter and the involvement on the ideas was active, and we're ready and looking forward to that input. When the response back to Mayor Turner is that we have shared that we will break the response up into 3 phases. Excuse me. And really it's because the asks are so broad and so many, and some are very detailed. So the first phase, we should be in the response, we should be able to have a response back quickly. And that's to really address the things that have already been worked out, that are already agreed to, and are clearly within TxDOT's purview and authority to agree to. And that one will be forthcoming very shortly. The second phase response is we'll be able to go through the request and really identify things that TxDOT does not have the authority to do. Again, I mentioned about the federal funding and the restrictions and requirements and criteria, as well as there's some statutory requirements that TxDOT has to adhere to. So some of those requests, we can certainly partner with other entities or municipalities and find ways to work together within the footprint of the project. And we plan to do that. And that will be kind of the second phase. It takes a little bit longer to do. The third phase will probably be the longest time frame in a response. And that will be the areas within the request that require additional study, maybe require certain stage gates to have been met, meaning, there are certain things we cannot do until we have the record of decision. And we want to get to that point. And we really truly want to understand the cause and the effect of some of the asks. And there may be some additional studies. And we would expect that one to take a little bit longer. But we have committed to breaking the request into those 3 phases, as well as maintaining open and transparent communication on where we are and what we're doing to work through those.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. One of the things that was in the letter that I think is real important, and I kind of referenced it in the beginning, because I think the human aspect of this project is getting a lot of attention, and rightly so. But TxDOT started years ago working with the City of Houston and the Houston Housing Authority to truly mitigate the impact on a lot of the citizens in the right-of-way discussion. And I have actually did a little research and a request to share some of this, because early acquisition is a tool that we can use, but only in certain situations. But the early acquisition was used in several cases regarding some of the of housing that will be taken, and specifically a lot of it right now in segment 3. But, I really wanted to share some of that background, and some of it we couldn't share earlier, but we can now. And I think it's really important for the public to understand. But there are a couple of the Clayton Homes and Kelly Homes come up often. And, Clayton Homes was constructed in 1952, and TxDOT will be acquiring all 296 units. What's interesting right now is that agreement's been worked out with the Houston Housing Authority. A little over 100 of those units have not been habitable since Hurricane Harvey.
Okay.
And so there were families displaced, and they've continued to be displaced. So TxDOT has worked out with the Houston Housing Authority that all will be repurchased. They will be rebuilt. There's an agreement that 80% are within a 2-mile radius. The cohesion of a community is incredibly important to us, and we understand our community. And those current locations are being worked out, and then those will be rebuilt. Those units, all 296 of them. And anyone that is displaced will have right of first refusal on any of those units. So now we'll be able to have just under 300 affordable housing units that are up to current building standards, that are in an area that that they can still maintain their work, their childcare, healthcare, churches, communities. So we think that often the impact of right-of-way is being talked about, but what we're doing to help mitigate that is not. And we do plan to make sure that anyone that is displaced has resources to make sure relocation, and also somebody to help them through that on kind of a one-on-one situation. Because as we talk about diversity, every one of those individuals impacted is a unique individual with unique needs. And we plan to really take that on one-on-one. And that's part of the process. TxDOT works very closely and actually has a standing every other week meeting, and also has a community steering committee with people that are directly involved in these communities, and we're listening and they're working with us to make sure we do that well. Kelly Homes will be a similar process for the units that are impacted there. There's also been early acquisitions and involvement with the local churches. And again, those are negotiations and they're being had one-on-one. So we respect the privacy of the particular businesses or churches or organizations. But what I really wanted to share is this has been going on for years. And because we aren't able to share certain things because of certain times in the process, we hope that it's heard that it doesn't mean we're not doing anything, but we are able to share some of these now. And I think it's really important that TxDOT does a better job of sharing what it is that we are doing to take care of our community and mitigate.
Can you share, about the project itself and just kind of the vision for it? Any firsts that TxDOT is kind of unveiling with this project, or any other projects for that matter? There's been a lot of really great things that are coming out from TxDOT.
Specific to this project, there are a ton of firsts and probably a lot of firsts that are completely unknown right now. As I just said, a lot of the detailed designs will come later. But I think that the magnitude of the involvement with the communities, with local businesses, with neighborhoods, with associations, and public involvement, the amount of time in some projects this size that we've allowed additional time for that type of input. The project is also, and we're working on this right now, and these fact sheets, so to speak, will be out when the FEIS is released. But it talks to the innovation with flooding. There is a lot of firsts that are being done. We certainly have our share of challenges when it comes to flooding, and the project incorporates a lot of innovation, a lot of technology that is a first. The involvement with and the considerations of innovation and mobility. Our freeways and areas will be used for AV, autonomous vehicles and those types of things. And all those types of things are being considered that even 10 years ago would never have been in a project like this or thought about in a project like this.
Right. Well, certainly, we commend the collaboration that's been happening between TxDOT and kind of all the city partners and all the other partners that you also, it might not be as visible. We know you work extensively with HGAC and through that process. And so there's a lot that goes into this behind the scenes. And so we really appreciate all of that. And kind of looking at, kind of going back to the bigger picture, we know that there's been some federal discussions about, kind of helping to backfill some of the state DOTs and kind of stimulus money. My sense is that the buzzword is flexibility with these funds, right? That's always the preferred option for these. And can you share just from kind of the state DOT level, what is helpful as far as kind of any relief from the federal government?
Honestly, any additional federal funds means we can continue to do more work. So it's always welcome. There are a couple bills out there that I'm sure you're familiar with. And they range from $15 billion to $50 billion packages. The TxDOT has not taken a position on either, nor can we. And certainly we believe that any federal funding will allow us to fill gaps. So it's being discussed. We're not really sure when or where it will come to us. What I can tell you is that should it come to TxDOT, we'd welcome it. And that's one of the reasons that we are continuing to progress projects to make sure we have shovel-ready projects so that when funds are available federally, we are able to use them. It's also interesting that I think it's unknown, but federal funds require additional and higher level of criteria on what they can be spent on, and then when it is spent on those projects, what levels they have to be shared at. So it is a blessing to have the money, but I think what's not understood is that there's a more rigorous process when there's federal funds. And there are times when that creates additional time, additional components in a project. And without understanding that, I think from the public's view, it can create a lot of questions on, well, why are they doing this? And sometimes it's a requirement to use the money that we've been able to access.
Right. That's very fair. I think people see the money and they think, oh, it just kind of goes right in this bucket, and then it just can get dispersed, accordingly. But that's not the case. So thank you for pointing that out.
Sure,
we at TAG, we're tracking all of it. We've not, taken a stand on one version or the other. We know that any money obviously is helpful. And I think what's great about TxDOT is that you guys are poised to have shovel-ready projects, which not everybody is in that situation. And so we are grateful for that. And we know that it's a job generator. Infrastructure investment is always a quick turnaround as far as job generating numbers. And we certainly know that we need that right now. So as TAG looks towards the legislative session, anything that we put in our agenda is really going to be focused on the job kind of creation component of things and what that looks like. So we know we shouldn't be asking for a lot right now. So, but we do want to help focus on the things that will bolster the economy back, and infrastructure investment is one of them. So,
well, the support that TAG gives the state with regard to transportation is always appreciated. So we welcome the help, we welcome the support, and thank you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to make sure that if there was anything else that that you have kind of learned through this process, or that TxDOT has learned, through this challenge, that's been really instructive and might even change some things moving forward.
I think a lot's going to change. I think that, I think what TxDOT's learned is that things that we thought had to be done a certain way, we have a lot of smart people, and the innovation is just kind of popping up all over the place, and we are able to create efficiencies and do things differently in a very innovative and creative way. And some of that will come out in time, some of it will come out in cost savings, and some of it will come out in work-life balance, quality type of things for even our associates and the community. So I think if I have learned anything through this time, it's, kind of how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there's so many unknowns right now that everybody's dealing with. And yet at the same time, the day-to-day responsibilities don't change. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, and will probably be one of the best things that come out of this for not just TxDOT, but a lot of folks individually.
Right, absolutely. Can you share, in talking about the commission meetings, how you guys are hosting those right now, so that people can have the ability to call in, even not be present physically, but can you share, for those that are tuning in, if they wanted to make a comment or if they wanted to engage in that, how they would be able to do that?
Sure, that's certainly another first, conducting business over Zoom, and this interview is an example of that. But for the first time ever, the commission meetings, the last 3, have been either over the telephone or the web, and we have allowed public comment and set it up so that the agenda's out ahead of time, the numbers out ahead of time, and folks have the ability to get into a telephonic queue, and then we are, after every agenda item, asked to see if there's anybody that would like to speak. So it's actually a simple process. We certainly have gotten better at it. We have learned there are delays and things like that, and try to put a little bit more time in there to make sure we capture everyone. We have had public comment, and we're, again, appreciative of the involvement, but it's been interesting. Our lettings haven't slowed down. We've still, since March, approved $1.5 billion in March, April, and May. And, in June will be a little bit more of a challenge. One of the other, challenges we've shared is, on top of everything else, TxDOT, as some know, was attacked by a ransomware attack. Right. And it basically shut our entire system down. So it was taken offline. Our IT department was very responsive. Our employees were able to continue to work, even with not having access to a lot of the systems that they have used for years. And it didn't stop. This, even in June, there will be a letting, even with our system kind of under attack most of May. But we've been working with obviously our IT department, our internal audit department, and the FBI to make sure that we are able to kind of take whatever action we can. But it's taught us our system's much more secure now. I think through things like that, you definitely come out stronger. And I think TxDOT has definitely done that.
Well, and just to share, you know, the comments among kind of the community, the transmission community, have been tremendous applause for TxDOT in handling that situation and really having to go back to old systems and paper, right? Paper bidding. And so just tremendous, and nothing stopped, right? It just kept going. And so amidst everything else, and a lot of people didn't even realize that that was happening. So kudos to TxDOT for really being able to be in the moment and shift gears and keep going. So great.
Well, I will pass that on, because those kudos go directly to the employees and the leadership, because they did it all and made it from the outside look very simple. And I know it probably was not. Right,
exactly. So I just want to ask, you know, we talked about kind of the professional side of how things have changed for you, and personally, you know, what have you kind of experienced through this, and what have you learned? And you shared a little bit about kind of being comfortable with the uncomfortable in general, but is there anything else that you would like to share that that's just been an experience for you through all of this?
Oh, I'd be incredibly remiss to say that there's not been a lot of experiences through this. I think personally, it's probably taught me that a lot of the things we thought were important are not. You know, we've all seemed to manage, we've all seemed to get through. Creativity has always been kind of fun, and innovation, and I pride myself on having change management skill sets, and they have certainly been challenged during this also. But I think personally, I have really enjoyed watching families slow down, just from a personal perspective. You know, we live in a community that's got a lot of outdoor activities, and you see a lot of families together. And I think in speaking to a lot of people, there's a lot more family dinners. Things have slowed down, and I think from what have we learned is that maybe that was a lost activity that's probably more important than maybe we thought it was.
Right. I definitely agree. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all of your time today, and thank you for sharing such great information about TxDOT and really the way that TxDOT has responded to the pandemic, and even beyond that. We appreciate all the work that you provide and leadership that you provide, and the entire team at TxDOT. We know that it's all hands on deck every day, and so we appreciate everything that you guys do. So thank you.
We appreciate it also, and the partnership, and look forward to continued partnership.
Thank you. That was Homeside Chat. We hope you enjoyed the program. This series would not be possible without the support of our 2020 mobility partners. We thank you, and stay tuned for more episodes of Homeside Chat.